They said the exam didn't define him. But that was a lie. Because the moment Samuel opened the envelope and saw the single word, regret, his future collapsed into a single sentence he'd been rehearsing his entire life. People like me don't make it. He didn't cry, didn't argue, didn't throw it away. He just stood there, still, in the narrow hallway of his apartment, staring at the letter. The system had failed him again, or so he thought. What happened next would force him to confront a truth far more uncomfortable than rejection. A truth he'd been running from his entire life. Samuel grew up learning how to lower expectations, and not because anyone sat him down and explained it, but because life taught it slowly. The apartment was always full. Too many people. Too little space. He shared a room with his older brother, Daniel, who seemed to move through life with a confidence Samuel never understood. His mother worked constantly. She did everything she could, but survival left no room for strategy. There were no shelves of books, no conversations about universities, no quiet hours set aside for thinking. At school, Samuel learned how to disappear. Teachers rotated. Lessons moved forward whether students were ready or not. Samuel wasn't unintelligent, but intelligence, left unused, becomes invisible. When his grades slipped, he adopted explanations that felt reasonable. The school lacked resources. The system wasn't fair. People like him always started behind. Over time, those explanations stopped being observations. They became identity, and that belief protected him from disappointment. But it also quietly sabotaged everything. Samuel became skilled at surviving without trying. He studied just enough to pass, avoided raising his hand, avoided risk. Because deep down, there was a fear worse than failure. Trying his hardest and discovering it wasn't enough. So when ambition came up, he dismissed it. When potential was mentioned, he shrugged. It wasn't arrogance, it was armor. Then came the scholarship, not just money. Escape. Samuel believed need should count for something. He prepared, but not deeply. Hoped, but didn't commit. And when the envelope arrived, the answer was clear. Regret. That night, the excuses returned, and the exam was biased. Others had better preparation. The system favored people like them. But the words felt thin, because beneath them was a truth he'd spent years avoiding. He hadn't done everything he could, and that realization hurt more than rejection ever had. For 3 days, Samuel drifted. He skipped lectures, avoided conversation, let silence fill the apartment. His mother didn't ask questions, which somehow made it worse. On the 4th night, Daniel walked into their room. Samuel was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Still feeling sorry for yourself? Samuel didn't answer. How long you planning to do this? Do what? This. Daniel gestured at him. The victim thing. Samuel sat up. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Daniel's voice was calm, not angry, just tired. You failed. So what? You think you're the first person in this apartment to fail something? Samuel looked away. The difference is, Daniel continued, most people fail and then figure out what to do next. You failed and decided to make it your identity. The words landed hard. That's not... It is. Daniel grabbed his jacket. And honestly, it's boring. The door closed. Samuel sat in the dark. His brother was right. He'd been auditioning for sympathy. No one was casting. For the first time in his life, he understood something he'd been avoiding. It wasn't the system that failed him. It was him. For the first time in days, something shifted. Not hope, anger, not at the system, not at the exam, at himself. For wasting time pretending he'd done his best when he knew he hadn't. The next morning, Samuel walked into a lecture hall he'd never been inside before. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to meet the one person who wouldn't let him lie to himself anymore. Dr. Eleanor Hayes stood at the front of the room. She wasn't warm. She wasn't inspirational. She was precise, demanding, unapologetically rigorous. Students feared her. They also respected her. Samuel sat in the back, planning to leave early. Instead, he stayed. Dr. Hayes taught as if understanding was a responsibility, not a favor. After the lecture, Samuel approached her. He spoke about failing the scholarship, about unfair systems, about feeling locked out. Dr. Hayes listened, then said quietly, "You're confusing disadvantage with destiny." Samuel started to respond, but she raised a hand. "I'm not saying the system is fair. It's not. But using that as an excuse to not try, that's a choice, and it's the easiest one you'll ever make." She looked at him directly. "I'll mentor you," she said, "but only if you stop protecting the story that keeps you small." Samuel hesitated. "What story?" "That you're stuck because of where you came from. You're stuck because you decided trying wasn't worth the risk of failing." No sympathy, no comfort, just truth. Samuel felt something crack open. "I don't know if I can." "That's fine," Dr. Hayes said. "You don't need to know if you can. You just need to start." He nodded. "Good. Be in my office tomorrow. 7 a.m. She turned and walked away. Samuel stood there. For the first time in his life, someone had treated him like he was capable of excellence. It was terrifying. 7 a.m. became non-negotiable. Hayes didn't ease him in. She assigned readings, gave him problems with no clear solutions, returned his work marked heavily in red. No praise, no encouragement. But she treated him like someone capable of meeting her standards. That belief was unsettling, because it meant he could no longer pretend he wasn't capable. The library became his second home. Most nights, it emptied early. Rows of chairs sat untouched, desks dark. Only one lamp stayed on. Samuel's lamp. It cast a small circle of light, not enough to feel safe, just enough to continue. He struggled, not memorizing, but thinking, not absorbing, but questioning. The work was harder than anything he'd done before, not because the material was impossible, because he was learning how to think, not just survive. Weeks passed, then months. His friends noticed the change. They laughed. "Why try so hard?" "Who are you trying to impress?" "You're becoming one of them." Part of Samuel wanted to go back, because growth is lonely before it's respected. But something had shifted. He wasn't doing this for approval anymore. He was doing it because mediocrity had started to feel like betrayal. Around month 5, the offer came. It wasn't dramatic, just practical. A friend told him about a job opening. Decent pay, flexible hours, no pressure to excel. "You're already doing better than most," the friend said. "Why keep punishing yourself?" Samuel sat with the thought longer than he wanted to admit, because the job wouldn't feel like quitting. It would feel like relief. For one night, he imagined saying yes, sleeping in, going home early, and being done with red ink and silent libraries. The idea didn't scare him. That's what scared him. The next morning, he showed up at the library anyway. Not because he was strong, but because he'd finally learned how easily he could disappear again. Dr. Hayes returned his midterm exam. 68%. Samuel stared at the number. Not failing, not excellent, mediocre. 4 months of sacrifice, 4 months of early mornings and late nights, 4 months of being called a sellout by his friends for a 68. He sat in the empty classroom, holding the paper. Dr. Hayes was packing her bag. "Disappointed?" she asked, not looking up. "I don't understand," Samuel said quietly. "I did everything you told me to do." "You did." She zipped her bag. "And you got a 68. So what's the point?" Dr. Hayes finally looked at him. "So the point is that effort doesn't guarantee results. Not immediately. You wanted a shortcut. There isn't one." She walked toward the door, then stopped. "You have 2 choices now, Samuel. Quit and prove everyone right, or keep going and risk failing anyway." She left. Samuel sat alone. The paper felt heavy. That night, he walked past the library, thought about going home, thought about giving up. He stood outside for a long time, then walked in, found his desk, turned on the lamp, and kept going. Something changed after that night. Not his circumstances, his mind. He stopped waiting for results to validate the effort. He started trusting the process even when nothing was visible. Month 6, 74%. Month 8, 81%. Month 10, 89%. The numbers climbed slowly, but more importantly, he stopped being the person who needed them to. His friends stopped calling. Daniel noticed, but didn't comment. His mother asked once if he was okay. Samuel said yes, and meant it. Because for the first time, he wasn't running from something. He was building toward something. The difference was everything. 18 months after his first failure, the scholarship exam returned. Samuel registered. This time, no prayers, no hope, just preparation. The exam was brutal, but he'd been training for brutal. When he walked out, he didn't feel confident. He felt ready. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Samuel opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Scholarship examination results. Applicant, Samuel J. Carter. Status, selected. He didn't smile right away. He read it twice, walked to a bench, sat down, then realized something unexpected. If the letter had said otherwise, he would have kept going anyway. That was the real transformation. The scholarship didn't create his discipline. It revealed it. He folded the paper carefully, slipped it into his jacket pocket. Not like a trophy, like a receipt. The following week, Samuel went to thank Dr. Hayes. She was in her office, grading papers. "Congratulations," she said without looking up. "Thank you. For everything. You did the work." Samuel hesitated. He pulled the folded letter from his pocket, set it on her desk. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why did you take a chance on me? That first day, when I came to you making excuses, you could have sent me away. Most people would have." Dr. Hayes stopped writing. She looked at the letter on her desk, then opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, placed it next to Samuel's letter. Inside was another letter, a rejection letter. Scholarship examination results. 2003 applicant, Eleanor Hayes. Status, not selected. Samuel looked at both letters side by side. One acceptance, one rejection. Both just paper. "Same exam?" he asked quietly. "Same exam, same school." "Did you reapply?" Dr. Hayes shook her head. "I didn't need to. Failing taught me something more valuable than winning ever could." "What?" "That the scholarship was never the point. What I did after I didn't get it, that was the point." She tapped both letters. "These are just papers, Samuel. What you become while waiting for them, that's what matters." She slid his acceptance letter back to him. "And you didn't need me to save you, Samuel. You needed someone who refused to accept your excuses. Samuel picked up his letter, folded it again, put it back in his pocket. "So, what now?" he asked. Dr. Hayes smiled for the first time. "Now you keep going. The scholarship opens doors. But who you've become, that's what walks through them." 2 years later, Samuel walked across the same campus. Same buildings, same paths, different posture. As he passed the library, most of it was dark. But one desk remained lit, a single lamp, a student seated beneath it, working quietly. Samuel slowed. The student looked young, tired, determined. For a moment, Samuel considered stopping, sharing his story, offering encouragement. But he didn't, because he understood now. That light wasn't loneliness. It was transformation. Masna didn't need an audience. It just needed to stay on. Samuel kept walking. Behind him, the lamp burned steady. Somewhere in that light, someone else was becoming. And that was enough. The distance between who you are and who you're capable of becoming is not measured in talent. It's measured in the decisions you make when results haven't arrived yet. Every day, you stand at the same choice Samuel stood at. Blame the system, or build anyway. Most people choose comfort and call it realism. A few choose discipline and call it Tuesday. The scholarship didn't change Samuel's life. The 18 months before it did. Because transformation doesn't happen when you win. It happens when you decide that losing won't stop you. The light in the library wasn't loneliness. Here it was becoming. If this story stayed with you, there are others like it here. Stories about quiet effort, about progress no one applauds, about becoming someone long before anyone notices. This is Tales by Cathie. New stories every week.